Hello, and welcome to the Reader's Advisory for Native American and Indigenous Peoples Heritage Month. My name is Amanda DeLand, and I am a Librarian 1 at Accokeek Branch Library. As part of Prince George's County Memorial Library System's celebration of Indigenous heritage, we have selected some of our collection's best books, written by or starring Native people to spotlight, including some personal favorites. Be sure to check out the Native American and Indigenous Peoples Heritage page on our Heritage Hub afterwards for even more titles to browse. The books I am covering in this program are roughly in order of age appropriateness, so if you only want books for adults, those will be near the end. We will begin with books for children. And our first book is Fry Bread, written by Kevin Noble Maillard, illustrated by Juana Martinez Neal. It describes the food fry bread, which is a dough fried in oil for special occasions, and connects the food to many different aspects of Native American lives and cultures. It includes many engagements of the senses, describing how fry bread is shaped, how it sounds when it's cooking, how it tastes, and also how fry bread connects to aspects like time when it was first cooked by Native American cultures, how it brings people together, and how it can be an art within the community. The vivid illustrations for the story are informed by many Native American traditions and cultures, most notably by the author's own Seminole Nation heritage. It celebrates both unity and diversity. A bonus for parents or older readers is that there is a recipe in the back of the book for one version of fry bread, because every nation has their own way of doing fry bread. If you would also like to do more research into this area, there is a longer explanation for each page in the back of the book, as well as a full bibliography. Our next book is called We Are Water Protectors. This book is written by Carol Lindstrom and illustrated by Michaela Goad. It's from the point of a young Native American girl, and it describes the Native American connection to water and opposition to dangerous development by oil companies, which threatens all of the water in her home. It centers on the importance of water to the Native American culture and generally to daily life for both animals and humans. And the main message is how humans have a responsibility to be caretakers of the environment, including standing up to other humans if that's what is necessary to protect them. It has a great message of responsibility, unity, and environmental awareness. And there's a page after the main story for parents that can give more context to the DAPL situation, the oil pipeline. A book that is for readers who are starting to find their own voice is Clever Rabbit and the Wolves. This book is retold by Susanna Davidson based on a Native American folktale, and it features the tale of Rabbit, who is being chased by wolves and has to find some clever method of getting them to stop chasing him, and ideally to get away entirely. It describes how Rabbit outsmarts the wolves with a fun dance that kids will definitely want to imitate and go along with. It's best for new readers who can sound out words and will give them confidence in their reading ability. There are more activities in the back with matching and verb activities. Moving on to books for children 1st through 6th grade. Our first novel is I Can Make This Promise. This book is written by Christine Day, and the main story is about Edie, whose full name is Edith, and who has a mixed heritage of being white on her dad's side and Native American on her mom's side. But she doesn't know very much other than that she is Native American on that side because her mother was adopted by a white couple shortly after her birth. She doesn't have a real connection to her culture or heritage. She's wondered about this, but hasn't gotten much information and doesn't think that much exists. But when working on a school project, she finds a photo of a woman who looks almost exactly like her and has her own name hidden in the attic. The story details Edie's quest to find out more about her heritage while also dealing with her shifting friendships and how to feel about her parents who seem to have kept this big secret from her. It features beautiful imagery and accessible language, and also highlights the modern Native American experience by featuring a child who could be the classmate of someone who is reading even today. It'll open your eyes to the discrimination that Native Americans face both historically and today without making it feel hopeless. Our next children's book is Race to the Sun. This book is written by Rebecca Roanhorse. It stars Najoni Begay, a Navajo teen, a 7th grader who starts seeing monsters one day. She tries to tell her parents, but her dad doesn't believe her, and she thinks that's the end of it until he disappears, leaving only a note that says, "Run." She and her brother and her friends must face trials from Diné holy people to rescue her father. The book is a remarkable fantasy adventure that puts a lot of emphasis on the bonds of family and friends, as well as environmental respect and stewardship. It's one of the few books that explore the fantasy mythos of the one of the Native American nations, this one being Navajo. It's also part of the Rick Riordan Presents label that centers and uplifts own voices stories from different cultures. So if your child is into Percy Jackson, that might be a very good book to recommend to them. The next set of books are from the teen section, but whether you or your child wishes to read them depends on how you feel about their maturity level. The first book is something that you may have heard of, Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. This book, besides being a National Book Award winner, is often assigned in high school, but don't let that scare you away. It's not dry at all. It is a very fun novel that is both frank and funny, describing what the author often, most of it is based on the author's own experiences, but there is a part of made-up stories. It's the story of Junior, a reservation kid who decides to go to a non-reservation high school for the sake of his education, because high school on the reservation often has teachers who aren't very engaged. It has not very much in the way of supplies, and overall, the kids outside seem to receive a better education. There are a lot of challenges in doing this, from getting lunch money to getting the 22 miles out of the reservation to school, to trying to fit in with all his peers, most of whom have not seen a Native American person in their school before. And it also details hard subjects, like the high mortality rate for Native Americans, alcoholism that is rampant in the community, bullying, both by other Native Americans and by people who don't understand them, and racism, among other things. Despite that, the book finds humor in a lot of situations, and it makes the main character very relatable, especially for teenage boys. The drawings that the artist puts in may appeal to kids who liked Diary of a Wimpy Kid but are ready for something more advanced, and help break up the distressing parts of the narrative. Overall, it's a important novel that needs that should be part of the general recommendations. The next book is a book called Not Your Princess, or rather, hashtag Not Your Princess. This book is a nonfiction collection of art, poetry, essays, and quotes from Native girls and women on what it means to be a Native woman. It is edited by Lisa Charlieboy and Mary Beth Leatherdale. It touches on a lot of topics, such as stereotyping, the ties of culture, the abuse that girls and women suffer for their Native heritage, both joy and pain. And it has been praised for making people who do not have Native heritage think about what it means, as well as offering inspiration for Native American teens. Our next book is called Surviving the City. Surviving the City is a graphic novel. It is written by Tasha Spillett and illustrated by Natasha Donovan. It stars two high school girls, Miquan and Des, who have grown up together and are as close as sisters, but have separate living situations. Miquan lives with her father, but Des's only relative is her grandmother, who is sick enough that social workers are considering putting Des in a group home, which is a common situation for Native American and Indigenous teenagers, as well as younger children. Des really doesn't want to leave everyone and everything she's known, as well as her only relative, even if she can't take care of her very well. And she disappears into the city out of stress. Miquan worries about her and finds solace in the ties of her culture, as well as going out to look for her friend. Throughout the book, the overhanging situation is in Canada, the murdered and missing Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirit people, which is an epidemic that as many as 10% of all female homicide cases in Canada are the victims are Indigenous women. This has received more attention lately, but still not enough. And throughout the book, there are examples of blue specter-like Indigenous women who take the place of all of the ones who have gone missing and who have been found dead. There are also gray specters, gray eyeless specters that haunt men who may present danger to Indigenous women. It's a beautifully illustrated story that encourages girls and women to find strength in their community and speak up against injustice while supporting the people closest to them. The next novel is called Elatsoe. This is a new release written by Darcy Little Badger with some illustrations by Rovina Kai. It's a story set in a slightly stranger America where magic exists and is common knowledge along with technology, but it's not as common in practice. The main character, who is a Lipan Apache girl, can see and speak with ghosts, which is a trait that she has inherited from her great-grandmother. She loses a relative in a car accident and is forbidden from trying to bring him back, but she does receive a dream where he speaks to her and lets her know that it wasn't an accident, he was murdered. The majority of the novel is her trying to find the truth behind his murder with her ghost dog, Kirby, and her friends. And she encounters quite a lot of unpleasantness buried beneath the perfect facade of the place where she lives. It's both a fun magical adventure and an unflinching tale of the atrocities perpetrated on Native Americans. There are some sections that are definitely horror, but others that are simply a contemporary teen novel with a Native American main character. I highly recommend it. The next novel is The Marrow Thieves. It's written by Sherry DeMoline, and it's set at an undisclosed future date where humanity has lost the ability to dream except for Native Americans. Desperate for dreams, people start harvesting Native American marrow, bone marrow, which allows them to temporarily access dreams again. These harvestings are often cloaked in governments trying to save people and put them in residential schools, but Indigenous people understand that this is yet another branch of the genocide that they've been facing for generations. They start hiding, running, trying to make it to hidden communities just to stay alive. And our main character, Frenchie, finds a band of survivors who accept him in, and they all try to find one of these hidden communities together. Along the way, they share their many varied experiences of tragedy and loss, while also creating a community out of their many different nations and heritage. It's not a light read at all, but it is very well written and thoughtful. And the key thread is finding hope to keep yourself and your culture alive. The final teen anthology is This Place, 150 Years Retold. The anthology is a graphic collection with various stories. And it is about 150 years of Canadian history starring Native people and communities. Uh, it's lushly illustrated and very moving. Stories range from how uh, traders interacted with Native Americans to how a Métis woman uh, punished settlers for daring to disrespect their community, to the first Native American who fought, or the first Indigenous person to fight in a Canadian war, and how he struggled to get recognition from the government after he returned. Um, the stories are told with deep empathy for these conflicts and these people. And they have hope in them that they are able to bring these struggles home to both Native and non-Native people uh, to help with their struggles. These next few books are for adult readers only. The first is There, and this is written by Tommy Orange. It is told by 12 different Native American characters, all attending the big Oakland powwow. Everything from a teenager who learned about his culture through YouTube videos and is attending for the first time, trying to take part in his culture, to a grandmother who has needed to take care of her young children and is bringing them along, to dissatisfied, uh, some dissatisfied men who intend to take advantage of the powwow to commit a crime, um, and many, many more characters. Uh, it is difficult to describe because of how many aspects of the same event are covered all in this one novel. It takes a deep look at each character, their circumstances, and the complex challenges they face, being modern, suburban, urban, or rural Native Americans uh, who may live anywhere from the center of the city to on reservations. Uh, it delivers harsh history in beautiful prose and is insightful and fast-paced. It's a novel you won't be able to put down until you reach the final shocking ending. Our last book is You Don't Have to Say You Love Me. I mentioned another one of Sherman Alexie's books earlier, The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. But this one is a memoir by Alexie about his relationship with his mother, who died a few years ago. Like Absolutely True Diary, it's humorous in many places, and it makes you laugh even as it stabs you in the heart with the most painful descriptions. It's brutally honest about life in the reservation, talking about subjects like rape, abuse, alcoholism, and bullying, but it never loses sight of hope and joy, and it is filled with love for the author's family, his sisters, his wife, his daughters, as well as the more complicated love for his parents, who both had struggles with alcoholism and trying to support their family. It's a wonderful explanation or exploration of the theme of love for a parent, explored in many different ways. And it is a recommended read. Thank you for joining me in exploring the many titles PGCMLS has to offer regarding Native American and Indigenous peoples' heritage. Be sure to check out our page on the Heritage Hub for book lists and more, including movies, biographies, and events throughout November. Thank you and good night.